Welcome into today's edition of Just the Truth. Glad to have you join me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. It was a busy day in court for President Donald Trump yesterday. Legal experts railed against former pornographic actress Stormy Daniels' salicious testimony as prejudicial on Tuesday as former President Trump's legal team moved for a mistrial that ultimately failed in the action-packed court day. And Trump's classified records trial, stemming from Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation, has been postponed with no new date. We have all the details on this full update on President Donald Trump's persecution at the hands of our judicial system in today's show. U.S. senators are demanding answers about Joe Biden's illegal ammunition delay to Israel. And Biden Education Secretary refuses to say if he would let boys fight his daughter and let his daughter undress in front of a group of boys. A question for all you parents out there: is it fair for you as a parent and as the person paying for all of the expenses for your daughter's wedding to be able to place a few demands on what the wedding will consist of? Again, you're paying all the expenses. Do you have the right to make a few requests? We'll jump into that as well.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, you know, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Let's start with Donald Trump's legal dilemma yesterday, as this was, day 13, I believe it was. Legal experts railed against former pornographic actress Stormy Daniels, saying that her testimony was salacious and prejudicial yesterday as former President Trump's legal team moved for a mistrial that ultimately failed in what was a action-packed court day yesterday. David Friedman, a lawyer and former U.S. ambassador to Israel during the Trump administration, posted on X, "I used to try cases for a living. I still have a pretty good sense of what evidence is relevant, what is prejudicial, and what is completely over the top and inadmissible. What the judge is letting in today in the Trump trial in New York City will be remembered as a dark stain on our judicial system, reminiscent of corrupt dictatorships," he said. "Shame on the prosecution for undermining our judicial system." Look, the prosecution, nor does the judge care what the perception of this trial is. If they cared about it, they wouldn't be having the trial to begin with. The comment came ahead of Trump's legal team moving for a mistrial as Ms. Daniels went into detail regarding her alleged sexual encounter with the former president back in 2006. Trump posted on Truth Social yesterday, "The prosecution, which has no case, has gone too far. Mistrial!" He said this witch hunt is false ancient history that was fully adjudicated by the voters in 2016's presidential election. He went on to write, "It only has to do with the election interference and trying to help crooked Joe Biden get elected because he can't do it by himself. It is a vicious attack by the Soros-backed DA, Alvin Bragg, in strict coordination with the DOJ and the White House on Biden's political opponent, me. It is illegal, unconstitutional, and strictly third world country." That last sentence was all caps, ! The motion for a mistrial, again, was ultimately denied by the presiding judge, Juan Merchan. So here's what we heard yesterday. Daniels detailed to the court that she met Trump in 2006 at Lake Tahoe. This was during a celebrity golf tournament, she said. She alleged that the pair had sex in Trump's hotel room during the event, which Trump has, as you know, repeatedly denied in many public comments. Daniels' testimony also included describing to the court how she got into the pornography business after working as an exotic dancer as a teenager. The case, of course, revolves around the alleged falsification of business records. Prosecutors say that Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, paid Daniels $130,000 to quiet her claims of this alleged extramarital sexual encounter. Prosecutors allege that the Trump organization reimbursed Mr. Cohen and fraudulently logged the payments as legal expenses, and they're working to prove that Trump falsified records with the intent to commit or conceal a second crime, which, if found guilty is a felony. Now, legal experts sounded off on social media that Daniels' testimony was irrelevant to the case and that it should not have been admitted into the record. Attorney David Limbaugh posted on X, "The salacious testimony of Stormy Daniels is not only prejudicial but irrelevant, so by no rationale under the evidentiary rule should it have been admitted." And he's one of many attorneys who should know this. An Indianapolis civil rights attorney wrote in a post, "Stormy Daniels testified against Trump this morning, going into salacious detail." That word salacious is used quite often, isn't it? Going into salacious detail about the alleged sexual encounter. This is irrelevant. It has no bearing on the issue in the trial, which is whether Trump hid the payment to her in order to influence the 2016 election. He wrote, "In a fair trial, the judge would exclude that line of questioning." Paul Ingracias, he's a lawyer and communications director for the National Constitutional Law Union. He wrote, "In a flagrant violation of New York's rules of evidence and judicial ethics guidelines, the judge is allowing Stormy Daniels to run wild with her highly prejudicial testimony, running roughshod over the objections of Trump's attorneys and allowing Daniels to vividly discuss every last salacious," there's the word again, "detail about the alleged interaction she had with Trump." Now, of course, we weren't in the courtroom, so we don't know everything that was said in there, just the reports that some of the court reporters have reported. Ingracia added, "Prosecutors are asking how tall she is relative to Trump and whether there was a power dynamic between them. Now, asking them about their alleged sexual affair, the position they were in, whether they were intoxicated, uncomfortable, and how they closed it off." He called this questioning and testimony totally out of line. And he has a point there, doesn't he? Look, the questioning that these prosecutors, and the whole reason of having Stormy Daniels testify to begin with, is to embarrass Donald Trump and to hopefully turn people against him. This is all about the election, nothing about what Trump may have done or did not do. The former president's son, Eric Trump, also weighed in on the testimony, calling it garbage. Eric Trump attended court again with his father, where he viewed witness testimony. Eric Trump, that is, posted on his X account, "Perspective, sitting front row attempting to figure out how any of this garbage from 20 years ago relates to, quote, legal bills submitted by a longtime personal attorney being booked as a legal expense. But I digress," he said. "To be clear, they don't give a S about the merits of this case. The 15 Manhattan prosecutors are sitting at their table and behind in the courthouse pews, giddy by this salacious show. This is the intent, not the merits, nor the fact that this entire case is a massive extortion play," he said. Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley said that Daniels is an entirely unnecessary witness, with her testimony serving as a form of punishment, he said, against Trump, saying that the judge has lost control of the courtroom.
You know, the statement of the judge that he's surprised there isn't a higher number of objections from the defense is baffling. The defense objected to putting her on the stand. They then objected to the scope of the questioning, and now the judge it sounds like Claude Rains saying, "I'm shocked. There's a porn star in my courtroom." Well, you know, if you give a lot of scope to testimony, what did you expect? And the problem with what the judge has done here is that this is an entirely unnecessary witness. It is uncontested that there's an NDA. What happened in their relationship, if there was one, is immaterial to how those payments were denoted by the Trump campaign. So the court had the opportunity repeatedly to say, we're not going to take this courtroom through details of this relationship. If you want to establish that a relationship occurred, do so, establish the dates. But likely those facts could have been stipulated to. So the prosecutors wanted to get salacious details out. And this is a form of punishment. They're trying to use a witness for punitive purposes and, in my view, political purposes. And this is what happens. And it happened because the judge lost control of his courtroom.
And Turley nailed it there, didn't he? The defense team repeatedly objected, according to reports from within the courtroom. They repeatedly objected to prosecutors' questions, which included intimate details of this alleged sexual encounter. Trump's team argued that there was no need for the detail, adding that there was also an issue with her credibility, pointing out that Ms. Daniels had signed a statement in 2018 saying that the sex act did not happen. Of course, now she's saying that the testimony that she did in fact sign it in 2018, but did not do so willingly, alleging that it was not factual and that she was under a non-disclosure agreement. Funny how that story changed so quickly, huh? She wanted the money and she was going to be quiet then, but now things have changed. Hey, I got a question for all of you parents out there. Is it fair for you as a parent and as the person paying for all of the expenses, let's say, for example, your daughter's wedding, for you to be able to place a few demands on what the wedding will consist of? Again, keep in mind, you're paying all of the expenses. So do you have the right to maybe say there are a few little things here that I want included? Soon going to be 4 years ago that I started my journey with PhD weight loss and nutrition. I lost 30 pounds pretty quickly, I might add, and I've been able to maintain that for almost 4 years now. It'll be 4 years coming up in July. If this is the year that you have decided that you're going to get healthy, that you're going to lose that weight, that visceral fat that's so damaging around your waist, then now's the time to start. Let me encourage you to make that call today. 864-252-4925. Set up your initial consultation with PhD Weight Loss and Nutritionist. Boy, am I glad that I met Dr. Ashley Lucas 4 years ago and that she got me on the right path to getting healthy. You're going to be able to do things that you may have thought you'd never be able to do again. Play with the kids, the grandkids, be able to hike and walk and maybe play a full 18-round hole of golf and be able to do it and not get so winded. Because when you take that excess weight off, you're just going to feel better. You're going to be able to focus. You're going to be able to sleep better. Your overall health is just going to be improved. 864-252-4925. Call, set up your initial consultation. Find them online at myphdweightloss.com. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. Well, a parent writing on Reddit is letting others know that he or she will pay for the children's weddings only if certain conditions are met, and how the parent's youngest has balked at the conditions, so payment is out. The youngest child is not going to get a wedding from mommy and daddy. The piece by the parent, gender not specific, on Reddit has got nearly 4,000 reactions to date, with over 1,300 people already commenting on it in just a few hours after it was posted. Here's what the parent did. They asked others on this social media platform, am I the total A for paying for my oldest child's dream wedding, but not my youngest wedding since she will not meet two of my conditions? Wrote the user by the name of Hot Explanation on Tuesday. This was on a subreddit known as Am I the A-hole? I am willing to pay for all my children's weddings if they follow two conditions, they say. The conditions, the person said, are that the venue needs to be wheelchair friendly, and they must invite all family members unless there's an extreme reason. Anything else is fine, and I'm going to fund the entire wedding. Sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? However, the parent has now run into a problem, or rather, I guess you might say the daughter who's to be married has run into a problem. The parent writes, my youngest is planning her wedding, and I told her the conditions when she got engaged. The parent goes on to write, last week she informed me that she's found her venue and asking for the down payment for it. The venue is in the mountains, though, and it is not wheelchair friendly. I informed my daughter, the parent went on, the paths are dirt. The doors are not big enough. There are tons of stairs. I reached out to the venue, so they almost have nothing for disabilities. And I told my daughter, this is not going to work. She said, knowing all this, I told her today I will not be paying since the venue breaks the first condition. This is where the argument started, she said. We have multiple family members who use a wheelchair, according to the parent. She thinks I'm a jerk and that I'm playing favorites. I reminded her there were conditions for me paying, and she didn't follow them. parent added as an edit to the post, to clarify, we have multiple family members who use a wheelchair. Thus, that's why we have the wheelchair rule. Is this parent being unreasonable? Love to get your feedback. Send me a quick text. Scores of writers weighed in on the situation. One writing, "It's completely obvious that someone needs access, and y'all are just ableist," wrote one comment who upvoted comment on the post, saying, "If you give in to your daughter, you're really not doing her a favor on a life lesson." Another person wrote in a comment, "It's completely fair if you don't pay. It's also completely fair for her to choose that location and pay herself. Would you be understanding?" I throw that question back out at you as well as a parent. If your daughter, let's say that, take the money out of the equation. Let's say your daughter or your son decides that, hey, I don't need your money. I'll pay for it myself, but here's where it's going to be, and it's at a location you don't like. Is that still okay? Would you be understanding for that? The original poster replied to that comment saying, "That's fine, saves me money. Actually, I just won't fund something that excludes our family member." The same parent, the original poster, added, "I will not fund any part of a wedding that excludes people, especially my family." Another commenter posed a series of questions to the original poster. Said, "Did you ask her what her plan was for the family who couldn't attend due to the lack of accessibility? Had she been planning to skip Rule 2 and not invite these people? And did she hope that they wouldn't come once learning where the venue was?" Went on to ask, is she not close to these people and therefore doesn't care if they come or not? That is a good question. I mean, if you have a family member and you know that they're handicapped and they're going to have a hard time getting into the venue you choose, aren't you kind of sending a message to them that I don't really care if you're there or not? If I choose a location that I know you can't get to, I'm kind of sending a message, aren't I? That I don't want you at my wedding. The other question was, why does she think that you're playing favorites if these rules apply to her siblings and have not been broken for them? Does she not know that her sibling held to the rules and that's why their wedding was paid for? The original poster in reply said she didn't have an answer for that one. Of course she didn't. I'd love to get your comments on this, and especially, now look, Peg and I, we are not parents of a daughter or of a son. We have Jesse and Simon, our two Cocker Spaniels. Many of you often comment and ask about Jesse and Simon, but we've never been down this road with a child. Now, when they first mentioned the post, and they're talking about $40,000 for a wedding. Now again, I've never paid for a wedding, but $40,000 for a wedding? Don't you think parents just sort of get out of control sometimes when it comes to weddings? I mean, 40 probably is cheap compared to some. I've heard of some parents spending 70, 80, $100,000 or more. Another person wrote in reply to the original post, "It looks like you were extremely clear with your conditions and your daughter decided not to follow them. You're not playing favorites. At worst, I would say that you're putting conditions on a gift, but considering how generous it is and the conditions are nothing outside the ordinary, there's nothing to complain about." The same commenter added, "On the other hand, I think your daughter is being extremely disrespectful. I can understand if she had a problem with the second condition, because sometimes you don't want people that you only talk to once or twice in your life in your wedding. But the problem is the first condition. It looks like she's trying to exclude people with disabilities. It's really disgusting." You think that's part of it? You think this young lady is purposely trying to exclude some of her family members? Or do you think she's just found this nice venue that she's fallen in love with and her fiance they like? And look, they're, of course, it doesn't say what age they are, but I'm assuming they're 20 something. They're kids, and it's their wedding. And you know, kids sometimes could just be self-absorbed and they don't care what other people think. The wedding is the center of their life for 6-8 months or a year leading up to it. Love to hear from some of you parents. If you're put in this situation, Would you pay for your child if they knew the rules leading into this? Would you still pay for it? 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. Give me a quick call. You can leave a voice message. Email's always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Continuing today's show, some U.S. senators are demanding answers about Joe Biden's illegal ammunition delay to Israel. During Monday's White House press briefing, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby refused to confirm or deny efforts by the administration to stop ammunition shipments to Israel as they battle Iranian-backed terrorist organization Hamas in the Gaza Strip. This had been a rumor that had started. A lot of news media were asking the question. We never really got confirmation as to whether or not they truly had stopped ammunition, but I think the fact that John Kirby refused to answer it kind of gives you a hint that maybe they have. We later confirmed that they had, in fact, stopped the shipment of ammunition. Here's John Kirby in the White House.
I'm going to go with that question one more time. Did the United States put a pause on arms shipment to Israel? Is that reporting correct?
I'm not going to confirm that reporting.
Don't you just love it when these guys just refuse to answer a question? Because they know the answer. And you kind of have an idea of what the answer is, but they just ignore it. And they're going to answer, they're going to dance around the issue. They're going to answer everything they can but the question that is asked. Republican Senators Joni Ernst and Ted Budd are now demanding answers and the details about this delay of congressionally approved ammunition to our longtime ally of Israel. I mean, this is in a very crucial time for Israel as they're in the heat of battle. And if we have pledged our support of this ammunition, then we need to follow through with it. In their letter, Ernst and Budd, who, by the way, just returned from Israel, wrote to Joe Biden this week, "We are shocked that your administration has reportedly decided to withhold critical ammunition to Israel. You promised your commitment to Israel was ironclad. Pausing much-needed military support to our closest Middle Eastern ally signals otherwise. We're deeply concerned that your administration failed to notify Congress about this decision." It's just one of many, many things that Joe Biden and his administration just believe they can do. They don't have to answer to Congress. They don't have to answer to the Department of Justice. There's no one that Joe Biden and his administration believe they have to answer to. Not even us, not even the voters. The senators went on to say, "We're deeply concerned that your administration failed to notify Congress about this decision. Just 1 month ago, Congress passed a national security supplemental to provide military assistance to Israel. In October 2023, you said that the funding package was imperative to, quote, provide the necessary security assistance to Israel and support Israeli efforts to secure the release of the hostages." They went on. April 24th, you signed the National Security Supplemental into law and promised that you will always make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against Iran and terrorists it supports. If these reports are true, then you have once again broken your promise to an American ally, they wrote. They kind of wrap things up by saying, "We must give Israel the arms it needs to fight the Hamas terrorists that continue to hold Americans hostage. We call on your administration to immediately restart the weapons shipment to Israel today as it continues to fight Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and other Iran-backed threats, they concluded. Former U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman is also blasting this move. So here's what we know, and this is according to a report in the Times of Israel. The U.S. State Department is on track to deliver a report to Congress this week, actually, determining whether the Biden administration has accepted assurances from Israel that it's using American weapons in accordance with international law. So we're kind of holding their feet to the fire here. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that this is our intention to provide it on time, but we have to verify that they're using them properly. The report to Congress, which will be released to the public, we'll supposed to be able to get to see it, is part of this new policy that's been instituted by U.S. President Joe Biden. This was started back in February, according to the Biden administration, and it requires foreign aid recipients to provide written assurances that they're using that aid in compliance with international law and that they're not obstructing the assistance of humanitarian aid. You think the same rule applies to Ukraine? You think Joe Biden has his goons over there checking out Ukraine and that they're using the assistance that the billions of dollars, what was it, $61 billion this latest round, that Ukraine is using their billions the way that it's intended to be used? I hope they are, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Joe Biden holds Ukraine to a different, or holds Israel to a different standard than Ukraine. Now, this order from the State Department does not place any tangible new conditions on foreign assistance, according to Biden's administration, given that recipients have always been required to use the aid in a manner consistent with the laws of war. But the White House has acknowledged that the memo was the result of pressure from progressive lawmakers, here we go again, who have not been convinced that Israel is abiding by these terms. So these progressive lawmakers are some of the same ones who are supporting these students who are parading around the country on these campuses, creating havoc. These progressive lawmakers support these demonstrators who have literally taken over buildings on college campuses, who have literally closed down college campuses, who have canceled graduation ceremonies of these kids around the country. Israel provided its first written assurance of compliance with the directive, officially known as the National Security Memorandum 20, back in March. Mr. Miller said that the U.S. had to date not found Israel to have violated the memo, but that assessments of Jerusalem's compliance were ongoing. So in the lead up to the deadline, which is actually today, progressive lawmakers have been intensifying their pressure on the Biden administration to deem Israel out of compliance with the international law in what would likely lead to a restriction on U.S. military aid. So they can't get the funding defeated in Congress, so now they're going to try to do it through some type of regulation here. Try to show that Israel, or pressure the Biden administration to show that Israel is out of compliance, and therefore that's the excuse to stop the ammunition from being sent over there. 88 Democrats signed a letter to Joe Biden just this past Friday expressing, quote, serious concerns regarding the Israeli government's conduct of the war in Gaza as it pertains to the deliberate withholding of humanitarian aid. Israel's restrictions on U.S.-backed humanitarian aid delivery in Gaza have contributed to an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe, the letter said, citing the U.S. Agency for International Development. Now, they don't care what the Hamas terrorists did as they crossed over the border back on October the 7th. They're not concerned with the humanitarian issues that were caused by the Hamas terrorist attack. Now, Israel insists that it does not block relief entering Gaza and that any shortages are the result of the inability of aid agencies to distribute to those in need. And maybe the Hamas terrorists are just keeping it for themselves. It's also pointed to a recent surge in aid that began last month. The uptick followed a threat from the Biden administration to shift its policy regarding the war if Israel didn't take immediate steps to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which many of the rights groups say is on the verge of famine. This past weekend, Israel closed its Kareem Shalom aid crossing the Gaza after a Hamas rocket attack from Rafah killed 4 IDF troops who were stationed nearby. The White House said that Biden managed to convince Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during a Monday call to reopen the crossing, though the reports are, as of yesterday, it had not been reopened yet. So you have House Democrats in this letter they sent to Biden on Friday. They're warning that Netanyahu that any impediment to Gaza aid delivery would risk future military aid from the U.S., while clarifying that defensive aid, such as Iron Dome missile interceptors, would continue. So we're going to keep sending them what they need for the Iron Dome. We're just going to hold back some of the other munitions. Now, we told you yesterday that the Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday that the Biden administration has delayed the sales of thousands of precision weapons to Israel in recent months. The Wall Street Journal seemed to have confirmed what some of the rumors were. The move, which included holding up MK-82 bombs, fuses, and what is called JDAM guidance kits to make the munitions more precise, came as U.S. pressure on Israel to hold off on full-scale invasion of the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The sale of the munitions was originally agreed upon back in February, according to this report. Over the weekend, the Axios news site reported that Joe Biden had put on hold this ammunition shipment to Israel for the first time since the war's outbreak. Senator Chris Van Hollen has been arguably the most vocal progressive opponent to accepting Israeli assurances regarding the Biden memo, telling Politico last week, God help us if this State Department report somehow says that the delivery of humanitarian assistance has been compliant with international standards. Anybody with eyes to see and ears to hear knows that that is just not true. But the apprehension regarding continued aid for Israel has expanded to other flanks within the Democrat Party, too. You saw Senator Mark Kelly just last week, one of the party's most conservative lawmakers for a Democrat, told NBC News that it would be appropriate to condition future aid to Israel if the government doesn't do better and doesn't prevent civilian deaths in Gaza. Again, this is just another way that the progressives are going to try to stop our support of Israel. Your comments are welcome. Send me a quick email, joey@joeyhudson.com. And your texts are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself if you're looking for a new appliance to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line. You can leave me a quick voice message, and your emails are welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. We have a lot of text messages for you, so let's jump right in. On the text line today, texter says, Joey, civil discourse is impossible any longer in America. The left will not allow it because objectivity would reveal their evil agenda. Texter, Joey, almost wish Mad Maxine was right. What am I seeing is promises of a 7,500% donation match. Maybe Trump would get some rest in jail. He's looking tired. These are all in reference to some comments earlier and yesterday as well. I showed you where Maxine is going to call Joe Biden's Department of Justice and investigate all those MAGA people who, like you and me, who are training up in the hills, she said, to start a civil war if, in fact, Donald Trump doesn't win in November. Texter, Joey, this fruitcake works for old Joe. Just imagine. Texter, Waters is projecting the progressives are planning a takeover. Look, that's the truth. If anybody's going to be demonstrating, if anyone is training up in the hills, it's a bunch of progressives who are ready to have another Black Lives Matter summer like we saw. Texter, Joey, glad to hear you listen all day and have since the days of Rush and Rush. Love, WORD. Thank you, Roger. Appreciate that. Texter, if they know who gets the money, just give it to them. Now, this is a good point. Texter says, unlike Maxine Waters, I have a real job. I don't have time to train up in the hills. Texter's Jeff, did Mike move to South Carolina or is he still in Florida? He's talking about Mike Gallagher. No, Mike hasn't moved here, but he's going to be here quite a lot now that he is being heard on News Talk 98.9 WORD, the voice of the Carolinas, from 10 a.m. to 2. And, hey, by the way, be sure and tune in to Mike's show each day at 10:34, where yours truly will be doing a segment in Mike's show every day, Monday through Friday at 10:34. Texter, hey, Joey, it's Jennifer. You are slamming it, she says. Both places, on the radio and the podcast. I could comment on Shrimp and Grits Kamala, or well-known inciter of protest against Trump, Maxine Waters, or phony baloney lying Joe Biden with his empty words to Jews at the Holocaust Memorial Museum's ceremony today. But instead, let's put a smile on our face for the man who says he'll go to jail if he has to defend his rights under the U.S. Constitution. And he's got the you-know-whats to do it. Got to put a man like that back in the White House, Jennifer says. Faye writes, Joey listened to a reporter at Trump court today, and he was very concerned as the left is going to make up whatever it takes for jurors to convict Trump. I am praying for a hung jury. It only takes one juror, and I pray God has that person already. Our text of encouragement today, Joel writes, for few things in the world are more powerful than a positive push, a smile, a word of optimism, and hope. Appreciate all those text messages. Yours is welcome. Hey, you can always email me too, joey@joeyhudson.com. Did you hear about Joe Biden's education secretary refusing to say if he would let boys fight his daughter and allow her to undress in front of boys in a locker room or a bathroom? These people are just sick that they'll go so far that they won't even protect their child. Now, the truth is he would. I guarantee you he would never allow his daughter to be in the same locker room with some man or some young boy who thinks he's a girl and undresses in front of her. But he won't say that. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona declined to answer questions about whether he would let boys fight his daughter in sports or undress in front of her in bathrooms. This was during a hearing this week. Joe Biden's administration released a finalized rule in April that extends Title IX protection to encompass sexual orientation and gender identity, but it does not address transgender athletes. Cardona refused to answer the questions from Republican Utah Representative Burgess Owens, saying that he would not comment on rules related to athletics that his department has not yet proposed. But if you listen to these questions, they're just common sense questions. He's not asking, Congressman Owens isn't asking Cardona to comment on a particular rule. He's just asking him simple questions. Would you allow a young boy to undress in front of your daughter? Here's the exchange.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize myself. Mr. Secretary, you're going through great lengths to argue that the new Title IX rule will not have an impact on athletics. Setting aside the absence of court decision preventing it, and setting aside the fact that athletics is printed over 30 times in the rule description, I have some very simple questions, straightforward questions. I'm just hoping to get some yes and no's on it. With energy put into Title IX rule changes, it's a 3-year effort. Can you assure us that your rules do not change protection of our girls that have had for over 50 years? Can you assure us that protecting biological girls from competing against genetically stronger, bigger, and faster biological men will not be considered a federal discrimination?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. You are referring to the athletics, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that rule-making process is underway. We haven't...
Okay, really, it's...
We haven't finalized the rules.
Okay, so is it a possibility that this girls competing against boys or refusing to will be considered discrimination?
Is
that a possibility?
I'm here to discuss, what we're doing in education to help children. Proposed rules, whether
it's really a yes or no. I mean, it should be a yes or no. It's a bridge that we all know that you're trying to get across. So is this something that you're looking at doing right now? Possibility?
I don't want to comment on a proposed rule that we haven't finalized yet.
Okay.
We have over 140,000.
Thank you. Let me just continue then. Mr. Secretary, you're in a very unique position to impact the lives, futures, and fortunes of millions of female athletes. Americans on both sides of this debate need to know how deep your commitment is. Would you force your daughter to undress in the bathroom with boys who are also undressing?
I am not going to be commenting on athletics rules that we haven't proposed.
You can't say yes or no on that?
I'd be happy to talk about a Title IX.
If your daughter was reported she felt uncomfortable in a boy's presence in a bathroom or locker room, would that be considered by your administration discrimination or bigotry?
As an educator for over 25 years...
You can't say yes or no to that?
I'd love to respond to your question, sir.
Okay, so yes or no. Would it be considered discrimination? She did not want that to happen.
As an educator for over 25 years, we have had the responsibility...
Okay, all right. I don't have but a few minutes here. Girls have now entered into contact sports of boxing and wrestling. Would you allow your daughter to physically fight and get beat up by a boy who called himself a girl? Yes or no?
Be happy to, once we finalize our regulations on Title IX athletics, to come back and have a conversation with you.
He's not going to answer. They never do. They always do this. I can't answer that right now. We still have a rule that's proposed. We haven't finalized it. He's not asking you, Mr. Secretary, about a rule or a proposed rule. He's asking you, would you let your daughter be in a locker room or in a bathroom where a young boy is undressing? Would you let your daughter wrestle or play sports in a male-dominated sport? I don't think he would. The new Title IX regulations increase protections to all students and increase protections for women, according to the Secretary. Maryland Republican Andy Harris asked, would you agree that women are physically different from men? He wouldn't answer that either. Cardona responded before the congressman interrupted him, saying, I see where you're going with this. There's nowhere to go with this, but it's just wrong. It's just simply wrong. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and we're going to win in the June primaries, and if we're going to win in November especially, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you will be too. Remember, God's got this. He's still in control.